Yarn. Yarn 29, hotel on the edge of Europe. It's Easter weekend 2025. I'm on a small ferry headed to Inishbofin Island, about 8 kilometres off the coast of Galway, on Ireland's west coast. The waves are still a little choppy this time of year. I've been going to Inishbofin, or Boffin for short, with a group of friends every Easter for years. It's our annual secular pilgrimage to the island, where we stay at Ireland's most westerly hotel, the Doonmore, or Murray's as the locals call it, named after the family who have run it for over half a century. As the island comes into sight, I catch my first glimpse of the hotel. Its distinct long white pristine facade glistens against the rugged landscape. We enter the harbour, passing the Star Fort, a remnant of Cromwell's time. The boat is brimming with excitement and anticipation as we awkwardly disembark and mingle on the pier. Our host, Andrew Murray, is there of course, making small talk from all angles. He's the Doonmore Hotel's current manager. For the next 5 months, he'll be up and down to the pier several times a day, shuttling guests to and from the hotel in his little minibus. Although he doesn't show it, I wonder if today he might be a little nervous. During the winter months, changes have been afoot at the hotel. There have been rumours the hotel has made some major renovations, and today will be the first time the general public will experience the new and improved Doonmore Hotel.
Bits of it hasn't changed at all. Zero. Nothing has changed.
Or maybe it's not as straightforward as that.
For example, the front porch and the bar, they're identical as they were last year. They haven't been changed.
Meet Andrew, right in the middle of some expectation management.
People are freaking out like, oh, you're not going to just touch the bar. You can't touch the bar. We said, no, the bar's not been touched. We're very conscious of the fact that we can't change. So we only have changed what we had to change, put it that way, in order for the whole thing to work.
Andrew is keen to get ahead of the story, as they say, because he doesn't want to worry his regular visitors who love the place as it is.
A great aspect of Inishbofin, compared to other islands in particular, is that once you go there every year, you become a frequent visitor.
One of Andrew's more opinionated regulars is Declan Shaw.
We have gone for every Easter for at least 15 years, so it's like a kind of a mega weekend. I like coming out Easter, and it's nice and quiet as well, so you also get a lot of those frequent visitors coming out specifically then, whereas in the summer you might get more random visitors as well.
Declan also happens to be an architect whose passion is conservation.
So you believe in innovation, but not... Well, no, I don't know. You don't believe in...
I don't think I believe in innovation at all, no.
Yeah.
Old things work well, not necessarily because they're old, but because they have not been removed, because they have worked well. Anything can be done within reason. The danger of modernising is that you're actually damaging the thing that does work, which is the opposite of fixing something that doesn't work. And it's actually the trickiest thing you can do, because you're basically killing the golden goose no matter what.
Okay, so not as many regulars are as hardline as Declan. But there's something people really love about this place that keeps them coming back every year.
There's something about it though, there's not that many places that feel like an actual escape. I love that there's absolutely no pretentiousness. There's no notions. It doesn't matter what you do. It doesn't matter who you are.
This is Roisin Lafferty, another self-proclaimed frequent visitor.
For me, it's almost like you can breathe there. It's just really special.
She also happens to be a world-renowned and multi-award-winning interior architect and designer. She's taken it upon herself to lead the design of the renovations of the 100-year-old building.
I was like, oh, Roisin Lafferty is redoing Murray's. And she's like, what? And they were like, we were joking about all of Roisin's sort of marble, sort of expensive finishes. like the maddest stuff you could possibly imagine, and whether they just put all of it into Marie's. It's like the worst possible Russian African design. And of course she wouldn't do that.
There's always resistance to change. And like the locals, like, who's your one from Dublin with their notions coming in here? You know, I want to put everyone's best foot forward and have it looking exactly as we want it to.
Roisin, she's well known now in her own right as a designer. On you see her on telly and in the papers the whole time.
My godmother, Emer Murray, she's my mom's best friend. I've been going there since I was a very little kid.
She wanted to be part of that transition, and of course made perfect sense for somebody who spent her whole life going there to be that person, and she's done a fab job.
So as we pack into Andrew's little bus on the dock and take off up to the hotel, I'm thinking, did they manage to finish the work on time? Is it everything they hoped? Will the regulars and locals accept it? But before we get there, I'm going to take you back a few months. Back to the middle of winter. The hotel is closed. The renovations have just begun, and I'm catching up with Andrew on a Zoom call.
You got there in the end. I appreciate
the
you sticking with me through the storms and all that. So thank you very much.
I'm eager to ask him what keeps people coming back to the island and the hotel every year.
Like 100 years or something. 100 years ago.
And why did his family decide to open a hotel on a remote island in the 1960s?
The origins of that now is quite interesting, because we're just exposing the origins of it literally at the moment, because we're doing some work in the place which involves, you know, knocking little bits of widening doors and things to what was the original building. And the original building that the hotel is built around was a normal house that my great grandfather built somewhere around the turn of the century, the 20th century. My granddad was born and reared there. My dad was born and reared there, and my mum was a Dub who ended up coming to Boffin and ended up teaching on the little island west of us, which you'd know of, Inishbofin. I don't know if you've ever made it out there, but Mum went there as a young 20-something-year-old to teach in the mid-50s, and she came over to Boffin every few weekends. Like wintertime would have been difficult weather-wise, because Shark was a tough little spot. It's about 3 miles of a row from here to there. There were no services of any kind, like no telephone, no running water, or God knows electricity. We didn't have either of them here even at that stage. So if they wanted anything, a box of matches to light their cigarettes, they'd have to row over here to get them. So Mum would hitch a lift with them in the boats, and during that time she met up with Dad. And of course he would leave her back on a Sunday. He'd row her back in the curragh on a Sunday evening. It's such a mad romantic story. When you tell it now, everybody goes, "Oh my God, that's such nothing romantic about having to row a curragh all the way back there on a Sunday." I think that probably expedited the marriage proposal just to. So they got married. She moved in to that house, and then Dad was a fisherman and farmer, and he had a trawler, and he had a heart attack when he was 49 years of age, and
God, wow.
Yeah, 1965, I think. And that put an end to his fishing career. He was the first man to be airlifted by the fledgling rescue service. And that is the only reason that I'm here talking to you now, because I was born after he survived.
No way.
So I have a great graw for the emergency services, helicopter in particular. The job they do is phenomenal. Starting right back then at the very early stages, they saved my old man's life. He survived enough to come home and produce 2 more children. That's myself and my younger brother Simon, who are still involved in the hotel. That my mother had to start then, because she had she had 5 children at that stage, no income. So she was now probably in her early 30s, and fierce, hard-working woman all her life, capable in all sorts of fields. She knew as much about fishing and farming as she did about knitting and baking and cooking and gardening and all that kind of stuff. She was self-taught and all that kind of stuff. So she set up built on 4 bedrooms to the old cottage originally to start, just to make a few quid. I mean, you're talking about Inishbofin, there was no running water, there was no electricity, so a B&B on Inishbofin back in those days you might as well have been on the Antarctic.
Due to Inishbofin's isolation, some inhabitants were in constant fear that they might face the same fate as their nearest neighbours on Inishark, whose community was relocated by the government.
Some Inishbofin people feel secure about the future. Others look to nearby Inishark, now depopulated, and say this could happen to Boffin too. The main difficulties on Inishark were not having a telephone or a proper harbour sheltered from the sea. Only 23 people were living there in 1960 when they were taken to the mainland.
People left in 1960. It's been it was a bit like the Blaskets and all the rest. It suffered at the hands of a government who were just keen on getting people off islands back in those days. We were too much trouble. It was too much bother to be putting telephone systems and having to build piers and stuff. So they were desperately trying to get everybody off the islands as fast as they could. So thankfully, we didn't, and a lot of people didn't. But some of them did, and Inishark and obviously the Blaskets famously were depopulated.
But the people of Inishbofin didn't go quietly. The advent of tourism might just have saved the island. For Margaret Murray's B&B, business was booming.
Within a couple of years, I think there was obviously enough interest or enough business. I mean, you're talking about right at the very beginning of all of this. What's now the main source of income for Inishbofin would be tourism, but back in those days, it was right at the very beginning. So they built on 12 bedrooms then, put up an upstairs in the hotel, and took the roof off the house basically and extended the whole thing.
This is when the hotel got its first drastic redesign, and it also involved a famous Irish designer, architect Leo Mansfield.
That was my uncle. Her brother, Leo Mansfield, was the architect, and that was his. It was a very specific kind of a style. I'm not an architect. I suppose if you're when you come in on the ferry and you're looking at it from coming around the lighthouse in Inishbofin, you can see the hotel just there. It sits down in the landscape. It's flush with the cliff top. It's just behind the cliff, but it's got the flat roof. It looks like a ship in the nighttime. You've got the 8 windows. It looks like the portholes in a ship kind of, and that was the general kind of overall kind of idea I think you had for it. Yeah, it's kind of iconic, and it is. My uncle Leo was the only architect in all of Connemara for, a couple of decades probably, and so he would have worked on every single hotel in Connemara and beyond.
Mansfield is famous among Irish architects for his modernist church designs.
He has a beautiful, beautiful wigwam, kind of glass wigwam church, and you can look straight from the altar out a massive landscape, though not the other way around, which is weird. And I loved this church, and then eventually learned from Andrew Murray that he had also designed the hotel.
Declan is a big fan of the Doonmore's exterior aesthetic. He remembers his thoughts seeing it for the first time.
Originally was amazed by seeing the building on the outside, because it's this whitewashed cubic thing. It looks modernist, but I thought it was traditional. So I thought it was a vernacular sort of building. By vernacular, usually vernacular means a cottage with a thatched roof, but it can also just mean something that's built by the locals. And I thought a lot of coastal architecture had this similar whitewashed lighthouse feel, and it was a similar thing but not a lighthouse, so I thought it was cool. Lovely lighthouse style building, but it's a hotel, and I thought it was just magical and perfect. And obviously those windows are kind of like portholes, but not circular, but you get a lot of early modernism would have a similar rigorous rectangular or square even continuous holes just like punched in walls, rather than earlier buildings would be longer, rectangular, because the price of beams is expensive, so you're restricted to narrow windows, but not when you have concrete and you can just do anything you want. So you can make big windows, which is kind of what the ground floor of Murray's is like, and then above that, once you have your pillars holding up the whole building, you can have punctuated continuous windows, which is a reflection directly of boat architecture basically. You don't get them as much in lighthouses. You do get little windows in lighthouses because they would be physically battered all the time. I'd say Murray's is physically battered a fair bit though in its location. But anyway, I consider Murray's the quintessential coastal modernism example.
To me, the location of this hotel is like, could you actually ask for anything better? Like, it is the dream location. It is like the views at the front of the hotel are breathtaking.
That's not saying improvements can't be made.
To me, it's always been such a shame that people park at the front view. Oh my goodness, it's like the most desirable view, and that you park there and block it.
We'll come back to that later. When the hotel was finally finished in 1969, it had its first grand opening.
The night that the Doonmore opened, there were boats from all over Connemara came in. Loads of boats came in from Cleggan and all around in for the night to celebrate this opening night. There's a man, he's still alive actually, but he was born on Inishark, and my mother actually taught him. He said it was the first time that one of our own had branched out and opened a hotel, because there were hotels around Clifton and Connemara, but they were kind of older. A lot of them would have been there from the old days, old money kind of places. This was a new venture that somebody, one of their own, as in a normal, ordinary fisherman, islander, kind of had struck out and built a hotel. So they were proud of the fact that somebody had done that.
Andrew is clearly very proud of what his family has built, especially his mother Margaret, her drive and her original vision for the place.
And she started that hotel. Mum really was the driving force behind it. Dad, as I said, was somewhat incapacitated post-heart attack. She had a particular idea for the place and a particular vision of the place. We grew all our own food. We had our own milk, our own bread, our own butter, cream, vegetables, fish, all of that. Like, to the level of, that's what everybody's trying to get to today. Like, if you had that going on today, it would be name your price kind of a job. It was so far ahead of itself in now. A lot of it was because it was the only way you could do it, but it just turns out that's what you wanted. The Connemara tweed, bread spreads, and all these lovely touches.
Wow.
And she had this vision and the courage to put a hotel on an island back then, when the banks and the tourist board were literally, I can never remember, but she told me it was one or the other, said, who in the name of God do you think is going to want to go to an island for their holidays? Like, it was so far, islands were so far behind the rest of the world at that stage that nobody could see there was any reason in the world anyone would want to go there on holidays, because there was nothing to do as they thought or whatever. Now she was proved right and he was proved wrong wherever he was. Against all the odds, she started that and made a success of it and reared 7 children out of it and put us all through school and college and all the rest.
I actually found a couple of clips of Margaret speaking to journalists in 1977 and again in 1987, where she is lobbying the Irish government for more support for the island.
We're not a Gaeltacht island, and therefore we don't get the benefits of the Gaeltacht islands yet, or indeed any of the Gaeltacht areas.
What exactly is your message to the government then?
To allocate funds immediately to help us to improve access and landing facilities on Inishbofin. Because if that doesn't happen fairly soon, our outlook is very poor. Already immigration has started yet again. An awful lot of our young people have gone, even in the last 12 months. 3 of my own family actually are away.
Margaret Murray's vision wasn't quite complete yet though. The hotel got another addition in the 70s. Arguably, its most popular feature with guests, Murray's Bar.
That was built on to the original hotel in 1973. So the hotel opened in June 1969, and the original bar was in the opposite end of the hotel in what's now a bedroom, a big bedroom, but it was still a very small bar. And I guess they realized that they needed more space because it was a bit more popular than they envisaged, and built on this bar as it is today. And that hasn't changed since 1973, really. Little bits and pieces, but small things. The overall shape of it and whatever is still the same. That was supposedly the biggest change in the early days. That would have been 4 years after the beginning of it. I remember that bar being built. There's something going on there, and that bar particularly, like that's an unreal space, because it works on every single level, and it shouldn't. If you look at it, it's just a box basically. It shouldn't really work. There's nothing fancy about it. It's old school for sure, but I've seen people sitting in there literally with a grin, as Paddy Kavanagh had it, with a smile swinging between the 2 ears like a skipping rope. Just the fact that they're sitting there by the fire, looking out the window, listen to good music on the either on the PA or on the live music or whatever. It's just doesn't matter what time of the day it is. They're sit doing a crossword at 11 o'clock in the morning, or they're there at 11 o'clock at night and the place is hopping and there's a great band playing, and it's just one of those kind of spaces that works.
Of course, the bar staff make it a great place too. Andrew makes sure of that.
On the floor in a place like Murray's, it's all about the personality. It's all about being able to engage with your customers. I remember we had a barman one time, a very good barman, but he was used to the busy city centre kind of thing, He pounced on, like, there was a couple of old ladies sitting down having, and he approached them so fast that he almost skidded to a halt, and he was like, "You okay there, women?" And like frightened the living day out of these two old ladies. I had to say, like, read the room, man. If it was two 20-year-old lads, different.
I can attest there is something special about that bar. I think it's one of the best pubs in Ireland. But why? What are the elements that make a great Irish pub? Again, I happen to know someone with strong opinions on pub design.
So yeah, that's an interest I have. So I'm like obviously gathering all the best pubs I could ever find in the west of Ireland and reading extensively about different pubs and why they're good and how the trends work. Pub design, which is, does a specific function. It's kind of a male place where people spill things, and it's masculine and it's wipe downable and cozy. Well, there's a story called Moon Underwater by George Orwell where he describes in excruciating detail this perfect pub called Moon Underwater.
In the Moon Underwater, it is always quiet enough. The house possesses neither a radio nor a piano. In winter, there is generally a good fire. The Victorian layout of the place gives one plenty of elbow room. Dinner at the Moon Underwater, but there's always a snack counter. The barmaids know their customers by name.
And at the end, he's like, "This is not a real pub."
But now it is time to reveal something which the discerning and disillusioned reader will probably have guessed already. There is no such place as the Moon Underwater.
It's a conglomeration of all of the typical trends you get in English pubs, which when you perfect them all, it's in this one thing. And I obviously wanted to write an Irish version of that because there's all sorts of trends. He's talking about ales and things that would be different here. So if you're doing a new pub, I would have guidelines on how to make it work nice, which I think have been forgotten by most people these days. Particularly as architects, when they're asked to build a pub, they're not specialised in pub design, so they're basically reinventing the wheel and doing it wrong. Publicans probably know better, if anything. But yeah, I would have certain guidelines which I think are consistent across all pubs, and I think there's crucial things would be like 3 things, which is continuous seating around the walls. That's the most important thing. Often you get pubs and fake pubs, like in the Banshees of Inisherin, that have that fake pub.
Do you want to know what the 3 things that I hate the most on Inisherin is? Not really.
And they didn't put this, and it just looks wrong.
Go on back to your own gang now, Pádraig. I'm serious now.
And it looks like a terrible pub.
Serious, are you?
Just have stools against a wall. It just looks silly. But yeah, continue sitting around the edges as much as possible. There are multiple advantages of it. One is that if you have only a handful of people in the pub, it doesn't look empty, but there is still room for a massive amount of people in the pub when it's completely full. If you had a continuous row of seats around the walls of the pub, it would look silly and empty if there's only a handful of people in there. But once they're a bench, it just looks normal. It functions brilliantly when the place is full and when the place is empty. It also hides the walls, so you don't have sort of ugly bits of lower wall which you can't put a picture on and end up getting dirty, so they're just like eliminated basically.
Check. Murray's bar has continuous bench seating.
The second thing that I would definitely put in as critical is dark materials, and specifically old materials. You could theoretically use wood that's new, but I think it does need to be sort of stained in this sort of dark-ish way. That's not just in pubs, but you do it in lots of places. But yeah, I think that's necessary.
Another check. Murray's bar, of course, has wood panelling.
And the third thing is decent low lighting, so you need to control the amount of windows and the lighting inside, because windows seem great in the day, but then at night time you have these black mirrors with like nothing outside them, making the inside sort of unpleasant and uncomfortable. But you also want it quite bright during the day often, so it depends. Some pubs don't want any windows and it's indoor zone only, like nighttime zone only, but other pubs, particularly Murray's for example, people hang out during the day and read the paper and like look out at the sea. There's a balance there which is tricky. It's very delicate.
I'm going to give Murray's bar a check for good lighting. In fact, if you go to Inishbofin enough times, you're likely to experience a power cut. But that doesn't stop the hotel bar or restaurant from functioning. The regular menu cards are replaced with laminated power cut menus. Some people even prefer the bar during blackouts.
The pub continues functioning because the taps still work without electricity, and they just put all the candles out. I had, I think, our nicest night ever in Murray's when it was all candlelit, and it was staying like that for hours, and people were playing trad, and it was great fun. Then the power came on, and everyone sighed.
So the bar is not changing, that's for sure. But I still wondered what Róisín thinks makes a good Irish pub. And this is not a test.
I think a lot of them, especially in the West, like in Connemara in general, it is that kind of homeliness. Like there's so many things layered up, always wood. I think here there's kind of a stone tile. It's worn. It's faded. There's like the little stools. You can move everything around. I think, like if you even look at that bar on plan, it's also packed together. Like you'd never say there's enough space. You'd say it's too tight. You'd say all these different things. But like you don't want to sit back and look at the furniture and furnishings in isolation, because that's not what it is. Here it's about the energy and the atmosphere. Everyone remembers it full. And you get like, you know, these talented people who are being brave and sing a song, and like people standing at the bar, everyone chatting, familiar faces, the fire on, packed. That is what no one wants to change. It would be rude too.
Although Murray's is only open during the summer season, it's still a favourite spot for the locals.
But yeah, they always stand and sit around at the bar, whereas the tourists would sit around at the seats. And sometimes you have to kind of fight through the locals to get to the bar, which is always funny.
We spoke about it recently, actually. Myself and a few of the lads that grew up here with us, and talking about the old people and the fun and the crack. Like I'm talking now back in the 70s and 80s, and it was we were open all year then, and it was just the laugh that people would have, and that was why they went to the pub. They went to the pub for the crack.
Actions for the next actions, right? Okay, so actions, right? Action. I think you'll know the actions.
Andrew, his partner Donna, and his siblings Simon and Aileen are the current custodians of the hotel. I imagine carrying on a family business comes with its challenges. Transitioning to the next generation isn't always smooth, especially when their mother had such a strong vision for the place.
Mum and Dad were there for years, and we were all there. Like there were 7 kids. We all worked there as kids and worked in the bar. I started working behind the bar in Murray's when I was 14. First full time, as in my first full summer I was 14, and we all did that. All of the family, 4 boys and 3 girls. And in the 80s, late 80s, my sister Aileen did a degree in hotel management, and she came back to run the hotel, which she did with Mum, and then they transitioned across basically over whatever number of years, and she became the main person with my brother Simon, who both of whom lived here. In around 2009, 10, my mother was diagnosed with Alzheimer's. She was here living at home, and my sister was trying to mind her and not for her not to go into a home, and that just became difficult. So I was a primary school teacher, and I started coming down the weekends and at Easter holidays and summer for the first couple of years. And then I took a career break, and I kind of took a full year, and I did a full season there to help out, basically. And then there's no way that Aileen could have managed the two things she was trying to do, run the hotel and mind mum, as anyone who has a parent with Alzheimer's, and there are fortunately an awful lot. It's a very difficult thing. It becomes a full-time caring situation. So basically I said, look, I'll take an extended career break, and I'll come and run the place while, Aileen was able to care for mum full time. So that was how I transitioned into that role. Mum passed away after a couple of years after that, in 2016 or 2015, and it was I decided I was going to have a go. I'd met my current partner Donna at that stage, and she decided to pack up her life in Dublin and come west, and a big change from the corporate world to 9 to 5 Monday to Friday corporate world in a city centre Dublin to Boffin. It's a lifestyle choice. We have made that choice, and we did it with our eyes open. I was principal of a primary school, and subsequently, again, it's 8 o'clock till 2 o'clock in the afternoon, kind of, good holidays and all the rest. So people often say to me, what in the name of God did you give up that for to come and do this, when they see me doing 16-hour days and no days off kind of crack, which would be typical. The first season I did 160 something days straight without a day off. Did the full season basically without a day off, and there was no day shorter than 14, 15 hours, I suppose. But it was my first season at the helm, and I wasn't going to let this ship go on the rocks in any shape or form. So I enjoyed it. I loved the business. I loved growing up there. I loved being part of that life where there's always somebody around to have a chat with, and you're standing behind the counter pulling pints, and there's two old lads at the counter, or the place is wedged. There's always a bit of banter, and I loved that. And people couldn't understand that I'd give up, a very well-paid, easy job with lots of good holidays and short hours. And my answer was quite simply that the long holidays, the good money, and the short hours just didn't suit me anymore. And I was I needed to be doing the exact opposite.
Boffin is renowned for its Irish trad music sessions. Many local Boffiners are accomplished musicians and have joined well-known bands and are highly esteemed in trad music circles. This endures at Murray's. It's been at its heart since the days when Andrew's parents ran the place.
My dad loved music, loved singing, he wasn't musical himself. He could sing, but he wasn't a performer at all, but loved it. And I know, say, Desi O'Halloran, those people would know of Desi O'Halloran. Very famous musician and singer from Boffin over the years. Passed away a few years ago, but he went to England when he was young enough, and then himself and his brother Vincent played music all over London, and were very famous Irish musicians in London and in the pub scene in London. They played a lot over there, made an album back in the 70s called Men of the Island. It was one of the first albums that anybody in this part of the world ever made. Desi used to say when he'd come home from England for his holidays, Dad would ask him to sing, and Desi's story was that he'd come out from behind the counter and he'd lean up against the counter while Desi was singing. He didn't give a damn who was looking for drink. Nobody get served while Desi was singing.
This is a recording of Desi and Sharon Shannon playing at Murray's in the year 2000.
What became the Inishbofin Ceilidh band was Desi and Paddy Joe King and Michael Joe and the lads. They used to do it. Francis Holler, and they did a regular gig at Murray's for years and years and years. Two nights a week, I think, Wednesdays and Fridays, Wednesdays and Saturdays. There was something about Boffin and something about the musicians and the people here that drew in other musicians from all over the country. Now you're talking about the best of the best. and they absolutely loved playing with the boffin musician, and still do. You're talking about the likes of Archie McGlynn, the famous guitar player from Oma, and he and Nulla Casey's wife, another brilliant musician. They got married here. They loved coming here. Nulla was a great friend of Geraldine King's. When I was a kid here, Jesus, I remember one night in Murray's, and I mean the Sunday night in the middle of winter, we had an accordion there all the time. And somebody'd say, Christy, who would be Desi's brother, Christy, play a tune and pass the box on. I remember 14 different people playing that accordion. 14 people. In the same night, all locals.
That's mad.
And I mean, yeah, all in the same. That's that little bar that you're familiar with. And they're all locals now. Some of them might have only played a couple of waltzes or whatever, but 14 different people played that box that night, and it's just bananas. They're all locals, and it's just nuts the fact that they were all there. And the people, just often people loved music, and it was always, for whatever reason, it was a place that always had some. But the older people, they'd play the harmonica. There were loads of them could play harmonica, and they'd have their harmonica. Again, it was easy to get, cheap, but a great way of maintaining tunes and song. Everybody sang. There were loads and loads and loads of singers on this island. And what was more important probably than that, or equally important, was there were listeners. People, an audience, people actually loved it. And even to this day, you'll see the young lads love music, and they'll stop and they'll listen to somebody singing, and you know, there's an appreciation for it, I suppose. But you know, the likes of Matt Malloy coming up, the Chieftains, famous musicians coming and sitting down and playing with the lads, they loved it. They just loved coming here.
With all that exposure to great music and skilled musicians, it started to rub off on Andrew, and it opened a door to a whole new world for him.
Farewell, my kind relation. So that's where I got my education, I suppose. My musical education came from working in the bar and hearing these lads play, and then so I started singing myself then, just out of the back of that, and suddenly discovered that I had a voice. Though I may rise or fall, I was literally here one night, and Alec Finn from Dedanan was here. He was a regular visitor as well, and he was doing a little tune with Geraldine King that I mentioned earlier. I was home on my holidays from teaching, and Geraldine said, would I come in and sing a couple of songs? So I said I would, and at this stage I had never done anything other than singing in the bar. Long story short, she said to Alec, would you mind working out some accompaniment for you know, for Andrew's songs? So I said yeah. He said fine. I sang 2 songs and he worked out something on the bouzouki, and as I was walking from that room to go up to do the couple of songs on the stage, I said, is that all right, Alec? And he goes, yeah, would you like a job? I got a job as the singer with Dedanan from that.
My first guests tonight are just back from an enormously successful coast-to-coast tour of the United States. They're one of our most innovative traditional groups with the uncanny knack of discovering new singing talent, and their current lineup is no exception. Will you welcome Dedanan?
Dedanan were famous on the global trad scene. They were known for blending traditional music with modern influences. The band went through lots of different incarnations and lineups down the years that included stints by Mary Black, Dolores Keane, Eleanor Shanley, Tommy Fleming and Andy Irvine.
Which led to the rest of my life being involved in music and traveling the world all over the place, yeah. Literally from America to China and most places in between. But it was a phenomenal few years, and I was with Dedanan for a good few years, 4 years maybe, and did an awful lot. I mean, they were at the peak of their game. They were one of the, probably this, next to the Chieftains, I suppose, probably one of the top few bands ever in this country in the trad scene.
That was Dedanan playing with the Dublin Philharmonic Orchestra in the Beijing Opera House in China.
Through them, I met loads and loads of people, you know, of the older generation, and at festivals you'd meet loads of other, you know, younger bands. a huge array of people, and some of whom are still my best friends. And that was the big kick-off, I suppose, of the music thing in Murray's, because once I took over running the place, then a lot of people that I was connected to, and all of whom obviously already loved Boffin, but then I had access to them and they just wanted to come down and play a few tunes. So that's why the whole Murray music thing kicked off. A lot of time they just love being here, you know, and going off swimming and chilling out in the afternoon, and then play for 3 or 4 hours at night. There's a side of it whereby you're maintaining a tradition of music, which is something I'm very conscious of. In fact, I've put on music more than anybody ever did before on Boffin. 7 nights a week was kind of unheard of. I started doing that way back, all of July and August, and a lot of June, realistically now, is kind of 7 nights a week.
I was cycling around the west coast and going to Inisheer and going to Aaronmore, Inishmore, and all sorts of places on the coast. I was going in looking for trad music, and it was like, oh, no trad music tonight. Oh, that's only on Wednesdays. And even on Saturday night on Inisheer, there was no trad music at all. And when I got back to Boffin eventually, I was like, is there trad music tonight? I was like, of course, just trad music every night in both pubs. I was like, oh yes, this is normal, this is the way it should be. But actually, that is quite rare.
And 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and...
Murray's loves music and musicians, but there is one major exception.
There is a sign in Murray's that says no spoons, and I thought that was a joke for years until I subsequently found out that it is strictly enforced.
Once you get into the habit of going to Boffin every year, the thought of not being able to get your annual fix never crossed many people's minds.
These past few months have been among the toughest in our country's history.
Until the COVID years, of course.
Understand that we have no treatment or vaccine for this virus. And until such time as we do, we'll be living a very different type of life.
When we were locked down and islands were locked down, that first ferry that arrived in the day that the island was allowed to open up, and I was on the pier where I am every day to meet the ferries and pick up the guests, and I was just walking down the pier and they were walking up, and it was unbelievable to see the light in their faces. They were just, their faces lit up, thinking, like, they were pretty much getting down, kissing the ground, thinking, Jesus Christ, we didn't think we were going to be able to get here this year. That was the fear.
So what is it about the place that drags people back?
It's a magic that can't be explained.
Ed and his wife Judy are in their 90s. I hope they don't mind me mentioning that. They've been frequent visitors to Boffin their whole adult lives.
There's a kind of wonderful sense of travelling to Inishbofin. You may travel by car or by bus or by train or a combination, but it's the last bit, it's the bit in the ferry that makes it such a different visit. Once you get onto the island, it has its own tranquility, a different pace of life.
It's all a bit simpler maybe. The island is just so absolutely beautiful and untouched, and in a way you don't want people to know about it.
I don't know, there's definitely a sort of a magic to the place. It's like another place. Whenever I'm there, I'm basically on holidays these days, so it kind of feels like a lovely place where I'm on holidays.
There's an authenticity to it that I think most places only strive for and can never get.
Whether you go into the pub or whether you go to Murray's, there's always somebody to talk to.
So I think Boffin does have the best balance of camaraderie and crack without being overrun of any of the places I've been, anyway.
Ed's favourite feeling is the moment after the last ferry off the island has left for the night.
When the ferry goes and you feel, I'm here now, I have to stay where I am, and you enjoy the wonderful peace of and the community of the island.
Andrew thinks this love for Boffin has only intensified since the pandemic.
It was like there was this renewed enthusiasm for the place. A guy who was here for He was 2 weeks in a cottage close by to the Doonmore. And then he came out with this line. He said, "You know what?" He said, I just effing love this place." And he'd probably come in for 10 years, maybe, he's a good while. This was kind of repeated so frequently over the summer. I remember saying to Donna, my partner, at one stage in probably August, I said, "What's changed? Something's changed, because I'm getting this mad vibe now that people that you'd expect to..." And I was in my head for a while, and about a week or so later, I was coming back up from the pier, and I just realized somebody must have said something to me, made some comment, and I realized, Jesus, that's it. I know what's changed. Nothing. And that was it. And that was the whole thing. Nothing has changed.
So with that in mind, you can see why Andrew is keen to play down any talk of change. But buildings don't last forever. They need to be maintained, and to keep the hotel functional, some updates become inevitable. Enter Roisin Lafferty.
When you realise that things have to be maintained anyway, and that you have to spend money maintaining them, then it's a question of, well, you need, maybe now's the time to change some things,
There are times there's nothing, you don't have a choice, you have to do something. And then there's a knock-on effect. You have to do this, and this.
When Roisin caught wind of an opportunity to leave her mark on one of her favourite places, she made it her mission to secure her dream project.
No, I said in no uncertain terms, I will just do this. This is my passion project, but it has to be me. This is just a personal project for me. This is something that I really want to be part of. I've gone over to that island definitely 4 times with a case full of samples. I think they're just what is she doing?
But the Murray family were not rushing into anything.
We've spoken about designing this hotel for at least 12 years. It might have even been my godmother saying, "I think you need to do a bit of work." Then maybe Andrew talked to me. So I guess it became something that was then a thought, like a planted seed. At one point we came over, we thought it was all going to happen at one time, and we brought builders over for a few days, which was gas. We were looking at all kinds of stuff, doing a rooftop terrace over the bar, restaurant and things. It was all controversial. Bit by bit, I'd realised that the conversations were going to become real.
When it was time to look at this beloved place from her childhood through her professional designer's eyes, initially it was challenging, but Roisin had an interesting technique to shake away some of her biases.
So then suddenly you're looking at it, a space that you haven't necessarily thought about, because you just accept it for exactly what it is. So then when we started to look at it, I took photos at the time because I was thinking about design. And it's something that I used to do with clients loads. I used to take photos of their house and show it to them, because people see it totally differently. You don't see it personally when it's a photograph. You know how it feels in all the spaces, but in the cold light of day, when you see it in a photograph, you decide, oh, yeah. Because when you take the meaning out of all of the things and just look at it. But I looked at the room, and it was quite, actually in itself, it wasn't really capturing this essence of what the place is. It definitely could have been improved. Their story wasn't necessarily captured externally. You totally soak it in when you're physically there. It's also okay, you've two very different clients here. One is they've been coming here for 20 years. They have the same room. They know what they like to eat. They don't even want the menu to change that much.
Welcome to room 3142.
And then you have the tourist who's heard about this gem, who's coming over.
But paid a good price for a room which is bed and breakfast.
With no kind of set expectation.
Double bed, nice lot of space for one
And this needs to cater for both.
And let's go through what you get. So
we all look at our phones, we all look at everything online. You need to be able to capture some sort of essence, I think, from afar, not just when you're there.
And on this side, a about 10 coat hangers, ironing board.
Roisin and the Murrays got to work planning the renovations, which would all have to be done in phases over several off-seasons so the hotel can stay open. She usually works on big budget projects with a bigger staff and lots of tradespeople and suppliers, but this sounds a bit different.
You know, this is different. This is them, first of all, it's seasonal. Second of all, like, they're doing it themselves. Third of all, it's on an island. You know, how do you get things to an island with difficulty?
Up until the late 1980s, it was even more difficult to get anything on or off the island because Boffin lacked a deep water pier.
People were decanted from the ferry boat on down into curraghs and rowed ashore.
This is Judy, one of the island's longest running frequent visitors, remembering what it was like before they had a deep water pier.
And so you can imagine people coming with their children and their dogs and their luggage and of course the islanders themselves coming in with all their bits and pieces. And our dog was actually thrown off the ferry down into the curragh and protesting wildly, I'm sure, all the way down.
Eventually, the islanders got their pier, so today, Roisin has slightly less logistical challenges. But what other challenges does she have? And is her process different working with the Murrays?
The process, the sequence of things, I'd say it's less linear maybe. Everyone's super passionate about it because it's their family. Because it's family, there's a lot of differing opinions. It's not necessarily one clean decision maker. There are many, all with different objectives.
With the likes of architects and designers, you have to trust them. Once they have your ideas about what you want, and once you have that kind of and you have to hold it, because people can run away with things. As you know, with architects, you could say suddenly they do something completely different because it's basically it's a showcase for their work.
No, it's about bringing people along with you, and I guess for me to reassure them that I'm not coming in here and trying to make it this fancy, over-the-top interior design, and that I do understand the essence of the place, and that actually that I love it so much, and that is what I want to be part of. It's not about me coming over and trying to impose this fancy interior design.
You have to attend to the history of the place. You have to make sure that that's not wiped out and erased in a flurry of bling.
The hotel, you know, why do so many people go there? Why do so many people love it? Because of how it makes them feel. Like straight away, it feels like you're in your granny's house. It feels like there are personal things there. It feels like it has a history, like a story.
It's like the old well-worn phrase, home from home, but there's so much is like that. And you know lots of people who've been coming here for a long, long time who have that affinity with the place. And it goes beyond the physical. There's more to it, and there's something else. There's another intangible that's at work. And that's the thing that you can't buy, you can't pay for. We couldn't recreate that. It's seeped in it, and we don't know what it is. But it's all that history, I suppose, just in the walls, you know. And it's kind of. I think when we had our 50th anniversary of the hotel back in 2019, we shut the hotel down for the weekend, basically for like Friday, Saturday night to everybody except just people who were invited, like family mostly, and people who had worked there over the years, and a few very, very long-term guests. And it was the weirdest thing ever, because you could hear echoes of the past coming through. You could hear everybody that was there before all there at the same time. You could kind of hear, you thought you'd heard somebody laughing, but that person is dead for 20 years, you know, but that was weird. Places like that, and I'm sure there are lots of these, and people who are listening to this will know these places, and it might be, you know, their granny's house. If one of the families still lives in it, you walk in that door and you can still sense their presence or something like that.
Essence is a word both Roisin and Andrew keep coming back to.
the essence of the place.
Some sort of essence, I think.
The essence of it hasn't changed.
Essence of what the place is.
I think what's critical is the essence of the place doesn't change. And I think what really holds that and anchors that down is the aforementioned old cottage in the middle of it all. That's the heart of it, and always was and always will be. And we know that's there, and our regulars know it's there, and you'll see it and you get to know it and you realise, oh yeah, that's what it is.
I'd even say we're celebrating much more what was the original house. Right now that is the lounge beside the dining, but for me one of the lovely things in that room is the wall thickness, because that was the original cottage, so it's probably like 800 millimeters thick. So I want to kind of really highlight that with the materials, that's you're stepping in, so you're kind of creating a portal into that room, more like a transition, that you're clearly stepping into something different, but for that to really feel like your living room, you know, with a stove and with these little nooks to sit in, and you can take out some books, the shelving, that feels like not hotel-y at all. You want to sit there. The concept is only about amplifying the family story, the history, keeping all of the artifacts, the things that have meaning, capture the feeling so that you see these things more, so that right now they're all a bit lost, and you know, there's some nice kind of plates and objects and ornaments, but there's so many more photos that could be shown really beautifully, and there's such a beautiful story of how it all started, of the generations, of how it continues and goes into a new chapter, and I feel like that's kind of my job here.
There was nice plates and things which I think they could redistribute around the place and have like good quality but slightly naff things. I think there's a lot of stuff there that instead of getting rid of, they could be more brought to the fore or whatever. Another thing which is difficult to modernise is that the naffness is actually cosy. It's a bit of nostalgia about that. So I like some things that are crap in a way, and it's impossible to replicate that because it was done by someone from a different generation who's now gone with stuff they had around, and it's like it's a living history. The place is like alive the way it's constructed, and it's impossible to do that now. It can only be like evolved over time.
The biggest change to the hotel this season will be where the guests enter. The plan is to move the main entrance to the back of the building, which may sound a bit jarring at first, but there's logic and even tradition behind it.
First of all, like, we're changing the entry point to the hotel. So that's quite a big thing. That's, you know, your first entry point is your whole first perspective, and it's into what was the living room. In a way, that's a great thing, because the reception wasn't really a reception before, and
it's so tricky to get the thing working. It has several fronts and several backs, so it's all a bit higgity-piggity, and it's just the way it's evolved. And actually kind of functions reasonably well, although inefficiently. The way the dynamic of all the weird spaces, like the little porch at the back, and the locals all use the back door, and the tourists all use the front door. And it's kind of coming around the back door because you're familiar with the place, and it's like a homely element. I quite like that feature.
This reminds me of an Irish saying, the only time you go through your front door is in a coffin.
To me, it's always been such a shame that people park at the front view. Oh my goodness, it's like the most desirable view, and that you park there and block it, you know, like really we want to frame everyone's view out to the sea. So this way it means you'll drive around the back. Where the reception is going to be now, there's a lovely opportunity to have these double doors. It's very clearly the entrance point, very clearly the reception. In a way, this is designed to not really feel like a hotel. So this is not a hotel lobby. We kind of want to feel like you're coming in at the back of the building, almost like you're going into the boot room. of a house. It feels familiar. Like you only go into the boot room of the house if you live in the house. The furniture is all vintage pieces we're collecting. It's not all bought from a shop. Like the joinery is nice tongue and groove paneling. There's texture, homeliness.
But I think they keep some of the design elements that you get in those buildings, like the tongue and groove walls, and maybe just even in their own non-painted like they would have been back then. I think that would be great if they did that and keep the spirit of it. The worst thing would be if they knocked the building down and built a new one and it was just plaster walls, crappy little skirting boards, glass everywhere, spotlights, echoing everything bad you get in every modern, unconsidered space.
Yeah, you have to adapt to the building and stuff. Otherwise it'd be war, because everyone would be walking in like, what is this? Where's Murray's gone? Yeah, that's not what is happening here. I wouldn't be allowed anyway. They just wouldn't do it.
It'll be slightly less random, I suppose. Slightly less randomness, but it's still, as I say, the essence is still there, because it's still built around a stone cottage, and that stone cottage is right there, and that can never go. Literally can't ever go, unless you're going to flatten the whole thing. And like I said, if somebody walks in the door the same day as you do and they've never been there before, they're going to look at it and say the exact same things and think the same things as you did the first time you walked in.
As the opening approaches, I wonder, as a designer, as a client, and as a frequent visitor, if Roisin and Andrew and Declan are apprehensive about the renovation.
I'm just conscious in the background. I think the challenge is that I know that there is an opening date and that can't change, because that's their business. I guess I'm at the end. I'm like, okay, but the art on the walls and the lamps and the decorative items need to be ordered now. I know you're doing the building work and you aren't thinking about those things, but I am, and they will have lead times and we need to get them in, because it needs to be finished and beautiful and ready.
There's always a little devil on your shoulder whispered in your ear, yeah, don't fuck this up. It's too valuable, it's too important.
No, I think that'll all be fine. They probably could use a little refresh, to be honest. But it's a living place, and I think it'll all be fine because there's people thinking about it. There's enough ongoing life in it that anything that it doesn't work will be corrected within a couple of years, presumably.
Okay, it's time for the big reveal. We arrive at the hotel and meet Roisin in the bar.
Welcome. Oh, it's lovely warm in here.
Pretty wet.
This is Lisa. Hiya. Nice to meet you. How's it going? Hiya, Lucy. How are you doing? Oh, you got a good spot. We've got the best spot.
Her and a whole team of people have been working all week to get the place ready on time. And Andrew pops over just as we're about to take a tour.
Last hour. The last seats were coming in on the ferry with the people.
We find Donna at her new reception desk.
A new spot.
Yeah.
As well,
Yeah. It's I have my kind of blur I can reel it off, and now it is gone.
It's like
every left and right is wrong. So I'm just like, oh, hang on, no, you're now going left. But you were going. It's just, and I didn't even think about it until I had to say it, and I was like, oh, where are you going? Like all of everything that's on the walls is all family pictures and paintings and gifts, and there's things everywhere. It's 56 years worth of, so that we were finally able to kind of really display.
Roisin and her senior designer Lisa walked Declan and I through the place.
It was all a mad dash. So it's tongue and groove, like a shelf and like a peg rail all around. And these are all salvaged artworks. We went through all the different sort. Yeah, the waiter station in the dining room, and then this is an old church pew. Yeah. These were for their 50th, the mum and dad's wedding anniversary.
Oh my God! Okay, it says father and mother.
Yeah.
So someone made these for them.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
All these are kind of been in the family for a long time. This was done by the architect, John. Mm-hmm.
Oh, this is Leo Mansfield.
Yeah.
So do you know what is a sketch of?
It's of Clifton.
Oh wow.
It's lovely, isn't it?
Man, he's a lovely drawer, isn't it?
You know, you can tell because it has all these architectural details which a non-architect would never draw in, like the slopes of the roofs, the sort of windows in a certain way. Yeah, it's nice. It's lovely.
Just the mountains of it as well. Yeah. We don't get too far before running into some of the locals in for a look around.
Hello there.
Hello. How are you? You're obviously your stamp is on this anyway. It looks amazing. It looks unreal. It's freaking me out a small bit. Like I'm not used to seeing it like this.
It's so weird. Unreal.
Well, yeah, it's freaking so small bit. Sorry.
Well, let's go home and lie down.
We crossed the threshold into what used to be the original house.
This is the original house, right?
This is still the original house. So we wanted to do like stone portals here and here, but we just didn't yet.
The history of the hotel is literally visible in and on the walls, with photos of the people special to the place.
He was best friends with Andrew's dad. He used to go over to Inishbofin to collect his mom.
He told me this story, yes.
Yeah,
Okay, so that's the guy.
He was what do you call it what's that called?
Chaperone.
Chaperone. He was a chaperone on a boat. Well, not officially, but he used
Andrew's
to go
mum
out
and
with
dad.
Andrew to keep him company on the way back.
And the plates have survived.
Did you know
They'll be more back up.
Did you know these can open down?
That's cool. Slides in, hides away in the wall. It's cool, isn't it? It's just this is a mixture of new and old furniture. In here.
Yeah.
We got these salvaged from a charity shop, and then these were chairs.
That's a lovely chair there. That one there.
These are new.
These came with us today.
Really?
This was on the ferry with us today.
It's gorgeous.
This and this.
I really like this. We're trying to get one in our house.
Is that an ottoman? No, what do you call that?
It's an ottoman stool, yeah, but it's a low one. I'll be falling asleep on that at some point.
I'm sure you will. As we move through the new restaurant, we run into longtime Murray's staff member, Alice O'Halloran.
Alice, how are you doing? Just getting a tour of the new gaff.
How are you?
Things.
Still well.
Still well. Great. What do you think? What is your view of the...
It's good.
Yeah?
Yeah, I like it anyway.
Is there more space in here? No, bigger? No.
Yeah, made it longer.
Yeah,
they
It is a bit longer,
extended it up into the middle of what we used to call the middle lounge, yeah?
Yeah, the middle lounge. What's it now? Just the lounge?
Yeah, so it's kind of half... We're still in the middle lounge.
How was your winter?
My winter was wonderful.
Yeah.
Didn't talk to anyone, it was great.
Yeah.
Read my books and had peaceful walks and
How do you
went
find
and had a session every now and again when I felt like it.
After we retire back to the bar, a long-time visitor is keen to tell Roisin her thoughts.
I was overwhelmed. I was tearful, and I just said, I just had to meet you and say that you've done an amazing job. I'm 80 this year, and I absolutely, coming here since 1973, and I can't believe that my grandchildren are going to be able to, because they come every year also, and they're all going to be here and they're going to continue on, and it's not going to change. It's going to be beautiful.
The importance of carrying on the tradition is what this place is all about. It's something I asked Andrew back in the winter when we spoke.
As an institution, I suppose that it's becoming now. It's important that it goes on. We're a little part of this gorgeous island and a big part of its history in terms of the tourist business. I know how special it is. I know how special you guys who come there all the time feel it is, how important it is to everybody, and I want that to go on. And it's future-proofing it now for the coming generations. Who ends up running it in 10 years? I'm not in any. People say to me about retiring. I'm at 56 now, so I'm still a young fella in some level anyway. I'm happy enough to do this another 10 or 15 years as long as I'm able. Nobody could have figured out that I was going to be the one who would end up running it. So likewise, a lot of our family have grown up, and my own kids and nephews and nieces, and indeed cousins have all worked there. But there's a plethora of next generation of the Murray clan, any one of them, or two of them, or three or four of them, who knows, could end up doing that job. But what's most important is that it's fit for purpose. So my job now is to make sure that it is fit for purpose to go forward.
Oh, all the money that e'er I had, I spent it in good company, and all the harm that e'er I've done, alas, it was to none but me. And all that I've done for want of wit, to memory now I can't recall. So fill to me the parting glass. Good night and joy be to you all. Good night, everyone, from Murray's Inishbofin, and see you soon.
This has been a story for yarnpodcast.com. Produced and narrated by me, John Roach. Special thanks to Andrew Murray, Declan Shaw, Roisin Lafferty, and all the guests and staff who talked to me. Thanks to Des Kavanagh for the specific music made for this episode. As well as a musician, Des makes and restores musical instruments. You can check him out at Kavanagh's Irish Instruments on Instagram. The rest of the music you've heard was recorded live at Murray's Bar in Inishbofin.